Americans for Fair Taxation presents the Weekly Chairman's Report, written by Steve Hayes, president of Americans for Fair Taxation, and recorded by Bob Paxton, a volunteer with the Florida FAIRtax Educational Association. And now, this week's Chairman's Report.
Hello, I'm Bob Paxton with the AFFT Chairman's Report for Friday, June 7th, 2024. Commissioner Werfel demands more money. An editorial in the Wall Street Journal discussed IRS Commissioner Danny Werfel's testimony before the House Appropriations Committee on May 7, 2024. Here are some of the points made in the editorial. Commissioner Werfel told legislators that the IRS faces financial collapse. Resources are limited, he said, and the agency, quote, will likely use them entirely before the funding expires. In other words, the IRS doesn't think that the $60 billion bonus it received from Congress in 2022 is enough, although that was supposed to last through 2031. Instead of explaining where the money went, Mr. Werfel asked the House to look the other way and grant his team another massive funding boost, this time through 2034. The extended bonus he seeks would bring total supplementary funding to $104 billion over 10 years. Mr. Werfel has also hinted at mass layoffs in the customer service area. The vast majority of taxpayers would be unable to reach an IRS representative for assistance, Mr. Werfel warned. Now, missing from the IRS's request was an accounting on how its last round of funding ran out so quickly. The money it received in the 2022 Inflation Reduction Act was meant to fund a strategic overhaul, but not much of the plan has been carried out. Now, just where did all this money go? By December, the IRS said it had almost 700,000 returns still waiting to be processed, most of which were filed earlier last year. Also, the IRS went ahead and launched a pilot this year, spending about $114 million for a platform that's currently serving only about 140,000 filers. Despite his pleas, Mr. Werfel is actually making a strong case for stripping the remainder of the billions in funding authorized by Congress instead of adding another cent of additional cash. In conclusion, Commissioner Werfel is in a terrible position. He's like the engineer of a train that has lost its brakes and is careening downhill toward a certain derailment. He oversees the IRS, an agency that's supposed to collect the revenue the government needs to operate. But here are some of his problems. The Internal Revenue Code is a complex and incomprehensible mishmash of words and rules that no one understands. In 2022, 162,037,000 individual 1040 forms were filed. During the 2021 tax season, the IRS received 282 million phone calls from taxpayers, but only answered 11% of those calls. The overall audit rate for the past 2 years is not known, but the most recent numbers show it to be less than 0.4%. The level of illegal income tax evasion now stands at over $1 trillion a year, and it's getting worse by the day. Now, evaders go to great lengths to appear legitimate. Consequently, the only way to catch the cheaters is to assume that everybody's cheating and aggressively audit the 80% of us who are trying to calculate and pay our taxes honestly. Commissioner Werfel, there is not enough money in the universe to make the present income payroll tax system work. It is fundamentally dysfunctional at its core. Now, there's an elegant solution to this problem. Pass the FAIRtax. The economy and tax revenues will grow much more rapidly under the FAIRtax. Budget cuts may still be required, but they will not need to be as painful. Interest costs on the national debt will come down and again be less than we pay for defense spending. Rates for mortgages, car loans, and credit card loans will quickly go down. All Americans will be more prosperous and confident about their future, and Social Security and Medicare would be fully solvent. No senior will ever have to worry about having their retirement income reduced because of the inability to finance the national debt. The solution? Pass the FAIRtax. Now, why would D.C. pass the FAIRtax and give up an almost unlimited source of donations? Well, they won't, at least not voluntarily. The only way they will is if the rest of us demand it. Isn't it time to end this ludicrous tax collection system and the IRS along with it? Now, there's going to be a vote on the FAIRtax in the House of Representatives. We now have the opportunity to force all members of the House to show where they stand. They can vote for the present income payroll tax system, or they can vote for the FAIRtax. They can support the corrupt income tax in the IRS, or they can vote to eliminate it. It can't be any simpler than that. They can continue to hide the true cost of their government, or they can pass the FAIRtax and show everyone the true cost of government on every retail receipt. And finally, they can support the largest transfer of power from government to the people, the FAIRtax, or they can vote against it. Now, if members think the FAIRtax needs to be amended to address a problem, then they can propose the change. Don't let them get away with rejecting the entire bill because it has a perceived flaw that can be easily addressed. And don't think for an instant there aren't any flaws in the income tax. Help us bring about real tax reform and stop future IRS abuses. By contributing or investing $10.40 a month, you help provide a financial base to Americans for fair taxation. Now, if you can make larger contributions/investments, these will be used not for salaries, as we're all volunteers, but for the needed updates to our economic studies, which will be vital for all future years. Please go to fairtax.org to invest in AFFT and help us pass the FAIRtax. It's an investment in your and your family's future.
This has been the Weekly Chairman's Report, written by Steve Hayes, President of Americans for Fair Taxation. Check back every week for news and information about the fair tax, and learn why the fair tax should replace our antiquated federal income tax system. If you'd like to receive a copy of the Chairman's Report in your inbox every week, sign up at fairtax.org.